Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video. North Winterfell. Everyone is silent as Maester Luwin reads the letter. A raven from the Citadel had arrived a few hours before, which made the aged Maester nearly stumble as he hands over the letter to the current Stark of Winterfell. Now here they are, reading the words of the letter from the capital, which is pathetically brief and curt. Lord Eddard Stark is dead, killed by assassins, protecting his grace King Robert Baratheon, who had also fallen on the attack. King Joffrey Baratheon now sits in his father's place and demands that the heir of the North come down south and pledge his allegiance to the current king, fucking Lannisters. Everyone nearly jumps as Robb suddenly stands and throws the wooden cup with such force at the wall that it explodes into smithereens upon impact. They cannot blame him for his reaction as the faces of each Stark in the room seems to turn gray and taciturn. I need tea to go up and see Bran. The trembling voice of Catelyn Stark stutters before robotically getting up and heading to the stairs. Annie Rickon trails behind her, with the former also crying at the fact that she would not see her father again, and the latter looking confused as to why his mother is crying. This leaves simply a standing and tearing Robb Stark, trying and failing to cover his tears. Maester Luwin with Theon and Dominic Bolton at the table, the latter having a grim countenance at the realization that the Warden of the North had once more been murdered by Southerners. So Lord Stark is dead. I am sorry, Robb, Theon sighs before picking up the letter. What do you plan to do, Robb? They are summoning you to the capital. I am giving them what they want. They want me to go there and fall on my knees at my father's killer. Well, I am coming down there, and I am bringing the wrath of the North with me. Maester Luwin? Yes, Robb. I meant Lord Stark? The aged teacher of the Stark children replies, stepping forward. Call the banners, Robb simply states, his face still teary while looking at the dying fireplace. Which one, my lord? Asked the Maester. All of them, the new Lord of Winterfell simply replies darkly. Are you sure about this, Robb? Asks Theon. We don't have proof of what really happened there at King's Landing. I am. Despite Dol Amroth not trading with us anymore, Jon has been more than kind on updating me as to the going-ons down south. Princess Myrcella Baratheon won the challenge of kings against Joffrey. Next morning, a massacre of the Red Keep happens, and the loser is now sitting on the throne. Even down south, I can smell the rotten smell of something wrong. He is the one responsible for the death of my father. I would bet my name on it. So we march south and get our revenge. Then for the death of your father, Robb, I meant Lord Stark. The voice of Demeric asks, Yes, but we won't be doing it alone. Let us see if Joffrey still wants his ass kissed when 20,000 Northerners pledge allegiance to the proper ruler of Westeros. And what about the impa, my lord? Asks Domeric. Robb simply looks back at the fireplace, the burning fury he is feeling turning into cold desire for vengeance. Hang him! Westerland. This is wrong, Jaime. Your father would never have supported this. The voice of his uncle, Jaime, deftly tunes out as he watches the Marshal of the Westerlands. My father-uncle is dead. I am the Lord of the West now, and this is what I have decided. Jaime simply replies curtly, much to the consternation of his uncle, who grumbles before walking off, leaving Jaime to stand on the parapets on his lonesome. Without anyone watching him now, Jaime allows himself to grimace unhappily. Despite being the Lord of Casterly Rock right now, he gets no pleasure on it. The situation, however, calls for him to step up, and he knows that he must step up. For the last wish of his beloved, he would kill the gods if she asks for it. The reason, however, why Jaime is now Lord Lannister is because of how untenable Joffrey's position is. Right now, he might be sitting king in King's Landing, but his support from Westeros is limited to one kingdom, and the Lords of the Crownlands. Even then, the latter is only fighting because of the ungodly debt they have to his father, not exactly prime ally material. Right now, there are enemies everywhere. The moment that the Citadel announced the Fat King's death and Joffrey's coronation, Stannis sends messages all over Westeros, naming all of the king's children as products of incest between him and Cersei. While it is indeed true, Jaime knows that the majority of Westerosi lords would find it absurd and simply conclude that it is convenient for the older brother as an excuse to aim for the throne. Either way, it costs them the support of the Stormlands. Ever since the victory of the War of the Faith, the Stormlords, despite having Renly as the appointed paramount, served Stannis rather. Thus, Joffrey would find no support there from them. The rest of the kingdoms, however, are divided. First and foremost of foes, of course, are the supporters of his daughter. If not for his promise to Cersei, he might have been proud of the power base that willingly supports her by their own choice. Alas, but the gods are cruel that they stand in opposite sides. Rivendell, he knows, would support Marcella. Jaime is not blind. He, above all else, recognizes the knowing looks that the Lady of Rivendell and his daughter is giving each other. It is the same as his and Cersei's. The two are in love. It is a given that the powerful young kingdom of its own would stand with his daughter. With them, of course, are the rest of the Riverlands. The enmity between the bastard daughter of Tully and her father has long been healed, and latest news at court tells that even Edmure has been brought to heel by his father to be cordial to his half-sister. The remaining lords and ladies of the Riverlands would fight by their side. Of course, with the Riverlands is the North. That is two kingdoms all in all, with one probably raring to fight. Their lord, after all, has been killed. Ironically, that is also the reason why Jaime included Stark to be eliminated. With the old Stark dead, the new one is green as grass and would be easier to deal with. The Reach, of course, would support Renly, since the Poof announced himself to be king, their wealth and prestige enough to put him as a capable challenger. Dorne, as usual, would sit back and do nothing. The Vale with that mad woman would the hopes would be neutral. The Knights of the Vale hold no love for the people of Rivendell. The humiliation during the War of the Faith runs deep, and the Vale holds true to the Seven who are one. The Iron Islands is as silent as usual, which puts them out of commission. As for Jaime, he has called the banners in order to strike first at the Riverlands. The trading posts, of course, set up by the traders of Rivendell here at the West have all been ransacked and raided already, their owners fleeing back home. If he can finish off the Riverlands before the North and Rivendell finish marshalling themselves, he might have a chance to get rid of one of his potential adversaries in a lightning strike. First things first, however, Jaime looks at the list of lords at the Riverlands. He must think like his father if he wants to secure Joffrey's legacy. There must be someone he can bribe, there to stall the continuing advance of the Northmen. The Stormlands, Dragonstone. No, my lord. Please don't. My lord. My lord. The pained screams of the protesting lords go high-pitched as the flames devoured them, giving the night an eerie feeling as everyone watching mutters to themselves at the grisly scene. For Stannis, however, he remains unmoving before the Red Priestess. Melisandre raises both arms before nodding at him. Taciturnly, Stannis strides forward and grabs the flaming sword at the foot of the burning pyres and draws it much to the cheering of the crowd. All hail Azor Ahai, who has drawn Lightbringer, the sword that would cast the darkness away. Melisandre declares loudly to the even more fanatical cheering of the crowd. Lord, lend us your light. For the night is dark and full of terrors, the crowd replies, falling onto their knees in reverence. Your grace, the people awaits. Melisandre also bows to Stannis, making him grunt as he steps forward. Stannis is not a religious man. Melisandre, however, promises him almost 3,000 sellswords paid and delivered from Essos, which would add nicely to the 25,000 levies he has. She also promises him vengeance against his brother, who would die without him lifting a sword. With him dead, Stannis is sure those fat flowers would wilt as their desire for a king on the throne die with his fool for a brother. Once he secured King's Landing, he would be in a strong position to deal with the last remaining contender of the throne. Prepare yourselves, Stannis declares loudly, raising the sword. Once the Lord of Light punishes my fool of a brother, we march to King's Landing and kill the incestuous bastard sitting on that throne. As the cheers of the Stormlords follow his words, Stannis allows himself a ghost of a smile. Sometimes it does feel good to be praised. King's Landing, Tourney Arena. Please, your grace. We did nothing wrong. We just sold our goods to the stewards who came to our stores. We did not care who they were, your grace. The peasant bawls as he shivers on his own pants, making Joffrey scowl. Liar! You sold goods that would supply the army of the traitor, Stannis Baratheon. You are in rebellion, therefore against the crown. My crown! Joffrey points to the gold apparel atop his head. Please, my lord, we did not do it. Please. Liar Gundar, get on with the execution. orders Joffrey with a royal wave to the giant chieftain of the Bone Talon clan that serves as representative for the mountain clans that serve under him. By your will, little king, the man inclines his head before grinning with yellow teeth at the now terrified merchant down below at the makeshift arena. With a powerful roar, 5 of his clansmen jump in, much to the panic of the 25 or so merchants accused of siding with the traitor Stannis Baratheon. The Goldcloaks reported that some of Stannis' men have bought provisions from them before they set sail to Dragonstone. Thus they are here to stand trial. Joffrey watches giddily as the men brandish their recycled swords and spears against the brawn-looking clan berserkers who roars before rushing the terrified civilians. They immediately broke as each one tries to make a run for it. The unlucky ones fell in seconds to the axes and maces of the clansmen who ripped them apart in glee. Some tried to climb the arena walls, but the gold cloaks stationed immediately opened fire, making them scream as they are riddled with arrows. The rest are wiser as they try to fight off the experienced and heavily muscled mountain clansmen. In the end of half an hour, the clansmen are all laughing and the arena is filled with dead bodies, much to Joffrey's delight. Sir Jonos, bring out the next batch of prisoners, Joffrey orders as he leans on his prepared couch with a basket of grapes at the table on his side. It's good to be the king. Rivendell, private quarters. Lyanna mentally congratulates herself for commissioning the War Room of Rivendell so early in its creation. She has, of course, expected in the beginning that not everything would be peaceful, since her transition from bastard to lady of the newest kingdom of Westeros, thus the need for the War Room. However, even her does not expect that she would use the War Room again, not after the War of Faith days. They have arrived here with no trouble via the roads of the skies, after dropping off the death dealers to the riding retinue that went with them at King's Landing. Myrcella, of course, had been troubled, and Lyanna, despite wanting to stay with her beloved, had handed her over to the more capable hands of Yasmina. She had taken the time then to assess the preparedness of Rivendell for the chaos that is about to come. War, after all, did not care if you were ready or not. Already messages from the spy networks of hers all over Westeros were sending a ton of messages to her. Trading hubs that she had all over the West had been evacuated, though a couple had been rather late, and its merchants captured and killed. The others, however, at the Reach in the Crownlands were more pragmatic and chose not to deprive themselves of Rivendell goods by attacking hapless merchants. The spies also told her about the different factions that were currently forming all around the continent, which Lyanna caught even Lyanna by surprise. Something that she would never admit at the pain of death. The time-traveling former wizard had expected that the death of Robert would cause chaos, bad management of the Fat King, and the rather lack of intimidating factor that the Targaryens wielded with their dragons. It would be simply inevitable that the transition of power would be rather challenging. Never in her wildest dreams, however, that the Lady of the Vale expected that it would be almost every kingdom for itself, mostly right now. The Reach supports Renly to be the next king, while the Stormlands are going for Stannis. The Westerlands, alongside the Crownlands, are rooting for Joffrey, who is busy proving day after day to lords and peasants at the capital why he should never be king. The Vale, surprisingly much to the consternation of its lords, is gearing for war against Rivendell and the North under the mad yowls of Lysa Arryn. Apparently, Baelish left standing orders that in the event of his demise, she avenge him by going after the head of Lyanna Tully and the rest of the Starks, thus the rather unexpected enemy. Word also is trickling that the ambitious Kraken of Pike is thinking about raiding north again for the humiliation that Robert has dealt to it during the Greyjoy Rebellion. Right now, however, Lyanna is standing on the large table at the middle of the war room, which is currently containing a painted map of Westeros. Around her, of course, are the forms of Amelia, the Castellan of Rivendell, Rhaenys, the unofficial bodyguard of Myrcella, Ser Lumord, commanding the Silver Knights Order, Draco, Watcher of Osgiliath, Sir John Fields, commander of the knights that call the territories of Rivendell home, and of course Princess Myrcella, the proper heir to the throne of the Seven Kingdoms, her confidants for the war to come. Your father is dead, begins Lyanna, turning to Myrcella. So is Lord Stark, for that matter, along with Sir Oakheart and Sir Greenfield. I'm sorry, Cella. That's all right, but thank you, Delia, Myrcella replies with a sad smile. I know that Joffrey would not be sitting on the Iron Throne if my father is still alive. The death of Lord Stark, however, would really ensure that the North would be with us for the wars to come, says Sir John, looking at the large expanse of the North. Robb Stark would be the new Stark Lord, right? How say you would? He be as the next Lord Paramount, my ladies. He's all right, for a son of a lord. A good head on his shoulders, though, much too honorable. He is his father's son, answers Rhaenys. He's the one who's making those lovesick eyes at you, right? Ray, asks Marcella with a teasing tone, making the former glare at her. Shella. Fine, I am being serious. We have enemies all over the place, says Draco, disregarding the light banter that the Princess of the Realm just tried to start, though we need to warn the North about the threat to their shores. If the messengers are right, and the Ironborn is planning on going independent again, the North would be a tempting target for them despite its lack of riches. Why so watcher, Draco? Marcella turns to the leader of the Black Guard, who acknowledges her with a bow. The northern shores are not as heavily fortified as that of the Westerlands. Tywin, after all, has learned his lesson since the Greyjoy Rebellion and have repaired and garrisoned every single holdfast and castle near the sea. Plus, there is also the fact that the North still holds Theon Greyjoy under their thumb, the only surviving heir of Balon Greyjoy. Knowing the attitude of the petty lord of the Iron Islands, he would sure use it as a rallying cry and cause for the rest of his raiders. He's right, Sella, and the North is too big, anyway, for the Northern Lords to keep an eye on, every shore. Any Ironborn can land on its shores in leisure, and it would be days before the nearest keep or holdfast. Be aware of its presence. What they need is a light reaction force that could traverse the entire area quickly and deal with any Ironborn wandering around. My knights will handle it, my lady, Sir John Fields volunteers. The rest of the knights will ride with me alongside our retinue of light cavalry. Very well, and also bring my warning to Robb Stark. Knowing the Northern Lords, they would be already arguing about how they would march here, answers Deliana before turning her attention to the map once again. We will need to deal with the rest of the other contenders of the throne for our dear Marcella here to be properly crowned queen. We know right now that 2 large forces would be heading directly for us. The nearest, of course, is that of the Westerlands under Ser Jaime Lannister. They would be reaching the borders of the Riverlands soon. I have sent word to my father there to prepare so they can slow them down a bit before they fully commit. The rest of us, on the other hand, in the meantime, must prepare to march. The Riverlands cannot hold back the strength of the Crownlands alone. We must deal with them, or rather, Marcella must deal with them. Me blinks the aforementioned princess, who is caught off guard with everybody looking at her. Yes, Diliana nods, much the flabbergasted expression of her fiancé. Everyone would be fighting in your name, Sella. You must be seen leading, else everyone would think that you are merely a figurehead and a puppet. Don't worry about it so much, dear. All you need to do is sit and look pretty. Leave the commanding and the fighting to Draco and the rest of the lords. Okay, but I will also be fighting. I would not let this men and women fight in my name without me sharing the danger with them. Huffs Marcella. Stubborn princess. You would have definitely fitted well with the House of Gryffindor. Deliana mentally muses, but she smiles on the outside. Very well, Sella, but Ray and Amelia will accompany you all the time. Under no circumstances will you be allowed to die, do you understand? Of course, Delia, you'd miss me too much if I ever ended up dead, replies the princess with a grin. Leave it to Sella to be so positive, despite the circumstances. Never lose that attitude, love. What about you, Lady Deliana? You would not be coming with us and facing the Lannister forces, asks Amelia. Deliana only smiles at her castellan. Leave it to Amelia to be rather perceptive when it comes to her good self. No, I would be marching with the Silver Knights, Order, and the Death Dealers east, answers Deliana. You plan to challenge the Vale, my lady, questions Amelia, obviously putting together what Deliana is planning inside her head. Quick. Yes. And before you start protesting about the numbers disadvantage that I would have, I would rather beseech you to have a little trust in me. We need to secure our border east and deal a large enough blow to bring the Lords of the Vale to the negotiating table before we turn our attention south. This is the only way that we would be able to cut through their dislike for us and at the same time override their honor-bound norm to obey that madwoman ruling through them. Deliana replies to Amelia, of course it is only part of the truth. The Hidden Ones have easily dug over the information long ago that Sweet Robin is not the son of Jon Arryn, but rather that of Patyr Baelish, who has taken advantage of Lysa's infatuation of him. The information, of course, could be released easily, and then voila, chaos in the Vale. For Deliana, however, the chance to face the Knights of the Vale in a face-up battle with a lot of cheating involved is too good an opportunity to miss. Last time the Knights of the Vale are defeated, when they are ripped apart by the magical forest. This time, however, it would not be a fluke, but by her prowess. She needs to remind people of her greatness in this war, at least once, as short as it would be. Are you sure about this, Delia? Asks Marcella, looking at her worriedly. You know it would not be bad if half of the Blackguard goes with you. The North, after all, and the Riverlands would be standing by me. No, Sela, the Slubber Order would be enough for this battle. Please remember who you are talking, dear one. I am the woman who tends to make the impossible possible, Deliana brags unashamedly, much to the amusement of everyone at the table. They have been with the Lady of Rivendell enough, after all, to know how vain she is. Very well, as you say. So, Delia, don't you dare, however, die on me. Marcella Mock glares. You won't me, Sela. Of course I won't. Either way. Deliana coughs, finishing the banter, while I would happily deal with the Knights of the Vale and Marcella, here finish off the Lannister forces. I believe that we should lessen Stannis' force invading King's Landing. It would save us a lot of hassle if a lot of his forces are under the water once he finishes Joffrey off. Do you really think that Stannis would be able to take King's Landing, my lady? Asks Sir John. The city has never fallen to an attack ever. If it is Jaime or Tywin alive, then Stannis would never be able to win. However, with only Joffrey, I bet that the city would fall in a day. Snorts Deliana. It is not a matter of if, but rather a matter of when. I believe it is high time that the Knights of Dol Amroth, up north, prove their worth. I hear that they have substantially built their navy already. It would also give Jon Stark up there something to do than sitting on the sidelines. He is too far, however, Lady Deliana, Rhaenys points out. Even if he sets sail in a few days, it would take too long before Stannis sails to King's Landing. Stannis is not sailing to King's Landing immediately. Deliana interjects, seating herself on one of the comfy couches and receiving a glass of butterbeer poured by Yasmina. He would not move until he takes out Renly. Only once his brother is dead will he move against King's Landing. Stannis plans to challenge the might of the Reach. Rhaenys asks, that's almost 100,000 men. Yes, but he doesn't plan to kill all of them. No, he'll cut off the head of the snake, according to the report of the Hidden Ones. He has in his employ one of the Red Priests of Essos. A nasty one at that. If I am correct, it would take at least a week before Stannis finally gets rid of Renly and remove the Reach from the equation. That is enough time for Jon to meet Stannis in battle. How exactly is Stannis planning to get rid of Renly Delia? Asks Marcella. Deliana simply smacks her lips as she takes a sip from the butterbeer. The most heinous magic of all time. Blood magic. Astapor Issos. Daenerys has always been led by her brother's dream that one day they would return home and claim their lost birthright from the usurper, Robert Baratheon. He would weave grand tales about how they would rule, the people they would be ruling, the great feasts, tourneys, the parade of lords and knights, bowing at the very mention of their name. Daenerys has always envisioned it. Right now, however, the truth about ruling is smacking her right in the face. The city is dying and ready to collapse when she first arrived. It had taken all of Daenerys' wit, cunning, and diplomatic skills to even bring it back to a sense of normalcy where its residents would not be tempted to eat one another out of sheer hunger. She sighs as she looks over the wide expanse of Astapor, whose citizens are now freed men and former rank-and-file merchants, traders, artisans, and masters too low in the spectrum to be included on the mass evacuation of the richer masters. Her dreams of ruling have been ruthlessly dashed by the truth about it. It requires many long sleepless nights, with many a headache from the people bring their troubles, and of course the external threats that might appear anytime and anywhere. Daenerys is just glad that her dragons are hunting on the deserts instead of choosing to be fed in the city. The last thing Astapor needs right now is 3 extra citizens with the voracious appetite of 20 men each. Castle River Run, Riverlands. Hoster Tully, with James's Potter soul inside it, has always known that the long peace set by the king ever since the end of the Second War of the Faith would not be stable for long. Long and bitter history of Earth has taught James enough that feudalism type of society is not one for long periods of time. Even back home, when there is a pope during the feudal ages to unite the scattering kingdoms to a single goal of a crusade, the peace never lasts long enough. The only reason why the Targs manage to bring their long peace to Westeros is because they have the fire-breathing lizards, who has no qualms scorching to dust anyone who doesn't agree with them. Now here they all are in a continental-wide slugfest of trouble, with almost every kingdom to itself. All in all, it is a large disaster in the making. Hoster, of course, has not been idle, simply eating, shitting, and sleeping during his final 10 years in life. Other than making sure that Edmure is sufficiently dosed by potions of courage and fortitude that repaired the setup of the Tully family, he has also done his best to reining in many of the Riverlords to his point of view about letting go of their hostile view to Deliana and Rivendell. Hoster's argument, after all, is simple and basically can be boiled down to our nearest neighbor is the Westerlands, which is stronger in every way compared to us. Now, in our current state, do you really want an enemy also on the east, or a strong ally that we can call upon in our time of need? Thus, begrudgingly, the Riverlords acquiesce. Though, however, Holster would bet that it's more of the fact that they are slowly going poor due to the rather bad business of selling their produce to the rest of Westeros. The North, after all, before the rather bad blood caused by Catelyn, relied heavily on the shipments of rice from Rivendell, while buying sparsely from the Riverlands. The Reach has turned their eyes on feeding everyone else that's left. This left the Riverlands in a tricky position. Holster has graciously negotiated with his daughter that they be able to rent out her ships and sell them at Essos, where food is always in demand. As a result, the main house of Tully earns a fair bit of coin at each transport of food. As for the Westerlands, Holster has not been negligent of them. When Tywin was alive, he had little cause of worry due to the understanding between the old lion and his daughter. He still, however, made measures for the worst, and it would serve them well now. The Riverlands, after all, cannot stand up to the might of the West, even before its sundering. Now, with it barely able to muster 15,000 men, levies included, they were in a pickle. They can still do some damage, however, and Hoster had entrusted that preparation they had to the more capable and young Edmure. He was old, after all, and was now dying as this body slowly recognized that its time had come. Tully's secret camp somewhere near the Golden Tooth? Edmure walks to the gathering, which is situated in a secret of caves where a large area opens up with a large crack from above, letting the sunlight inside the clearing underground. Here, nearly 300 trappers, hunters, and slingers have been forcefully recruited under the 50 or so experienced hunters trained by Hoster Tully. If there is one thing that the Riverlands has in abundance, is wildlife and small game. Exactly. This results to a fair amount of its populace to be hunters by trade, knowing instinctively to creep in silence. Instinctively. Most importantly, however, any self-respecting hunter knows the value of patience, which is what Edmure and his father has been aiming for. They have already gotten word, after all, about the falling out of King's Landing and the Marshal of the Westerlands, with their main army swiftly assembling on the outskirts of the Golden Tooth. There is no hope for the Riverlords to beat an army composed of nearly 30,000 swords, thanks to the large numbers of mercenaries in tow with the local levies of the West. Not all is bad news, of course. Owls from Rivendell already brought the message that the Crown Princess Myrcella herself is leading the van with the entirety of the Blackguard legions of Rivendell, and that also of Osgiliath. That is at least 15,000 men, something that Edmure is looking forward to. They have, after all, a reputation of beating armies larger than them. Better news, however, is that the Castellan of Rivendell, Amelia, would also be with the Crown Princess, and boy does it makes his heart sore. Right now, however, Edmure has a duty to do, and that means delaying the Lannister shits as best as he can and allow the legions of Rivendell to arrive without the fucking Kingslayer rampaging on his home. In any battle, when you have the larger force, you attack. Straightforward. You stab him in front. Edmure shouts in instruction as every eye of the 350 focus at him. When you are the one with the lesser force, however, you strike from the side, from the back. You attack the vein that supplies the heart. Either way, the heart ends up dead the same way. What do you mean, Lord Edmure? We steal their food? Asks one of the hunters. Somewhere close, we attack the army supply lines, their comfort, their food, their water, and anyways, we plan for them to stop and advance. No more, no more, no more, no more, no more. Edmure just smiles at the enthusiasm that his men are showing. Good. Then we begin tomorrow. The fuckers sail their small ships on our rivers, as if they own them. Let us remind them who truly owns this land, eh? Dwell Amroth, the north. Beautiful flags and banners of the Blue Swan flying in a white field flutters over the ships of Dol Amroth. Currently in its entirety, a fleet of almost 100 longships alongside 20 massive galleons repurposed for war are ready to take the host of almost 5,000 men to war. At the head of the first long ship, with the swan banner wearing a circlet, stands tall and proud in his ornate silver armor gleaming in the sunlight, the custodian of Dol Amroth, Jon Stark. At his back flutters a cape of pure sky blue like the very waters of the seas, while his head is covered with a helmet with a wing design to it on its sides, hiding everything but the slits of his eyes. It is a good thing for Jon that his helmet covers all else. Everyone would see his expression that is caught between fear and confidence. It has been a fortnight since the letter arrived from Rivendell calling them all to war in support for Princess Myrcella as Crown Princess of Westeros. Jon has been updated, of course, about the going-ons in King's Landing. Dol Amroth is a hub in the north for trade and mercantile, which results to a lot of visitors from the other kingdoms and countries. With them, of course, is the news, thus it is no shock to him about the war that is to come. As for Jon, he is filled with righteous zeal and hatred about going to war against the fop currently sitting his pretty ass on the throne. Joffrey has his father killed alongside the jolly king, Robert. Jon would want nothing more than to impale him on the throne he is sitting on. In fact, Jon almost picks up his sword and would have joined Robb in the North's march down south, if not for Eaglight literally slapping the sense into him to remind Jon that he has duties as custodian of Dol Amroth, and he cannot just up and leave like the bastard he used to be. It stung, but Jon acquiesced. Then the orders from south came, and Jon is only too happy to comply. Nearly every fighting man of Dol Amroth has been called to arms, with many of the fairer gender coming also. 4,000 in all, a mix of Westerosi, Essosi, and UT descent board the ships in preparation for the war down south. Their orders, after all, are simple. They are to engage Stannis Baratheon and basically be a nuisance to the fanatic Dour Stag. At the moment before heading off to cut Joffrey's head, Jon would be lying. He says that he is not afraid. He is almost quaking in his boots, despite his rather confident pose and positioning at the helm of the fleet. This is the first time he is going to war, after all. He clamps down hard on his negative feelings, though, and thought of his father killed down south so unjustly, replacing the fear with anger and desire for revenge. He would kill them all. Robb would have to forgive him if he plunges his sword on Joffrey's heart first. Rivendell, Hamlet's town. The sound of thousands of boots marching in perfect unison is the very epitome of the Blackguard legions. Well-trained, disciplined, and knowledgeable in the art of war. Now line upon line of black-clad legionnaires in their circular shields parade down as the roll call is being called. Company upon company, squad upon squad officers do the final checks for the march down south. Myrcella cannot fathom how such large numbers would be willing to fight and die for her alone. Back then during the War of the Faith, they are fighting for Deliana, and it is understandable. However, right now, they are fighting for her, a princess for the crown, and not for their lady whom they are fanatical about. She can't help but wonder if her time here at Rivendell has endeared her to them. Either way, it is a fascinating sight that makes her rather proud and confident of herself. 20,000 men, good work, Lord Marcus, comments Deliana to the elder, making Myrcella hold back the snigger that threatens to come out of her mouth, even as the elder of the Green Men almost kowtows in thanks of the admiring words that the Lady of Rivendell has given him. Apparently by some inane miracle, Lord Marcus has successfully managed to hide the operation of training another 10,000 reserves that could be added to the Blackguard legions in a heartbeat. In short, they are auxiliaries, more brawlers than fighters, trained from the very lands controlled by Rivendell. They all in all adds very well to a grand total of 20,000 men in the legions alone. Deliana might maintain a poker face, but Myrcella can see that beneath the veneer of a smile and pride, the Lady of Rivendell is irritated for being kept in the dark for a mere surprise. Myrcella makes a note to tease her relentlessly once things have settled down, and Deliana has put all her enemies into the ground. A powerful screech makes itself known, and Myrcella smiles at the sight of their griffins landing on the open space within their area. There are 4 of them all in all, each as majestic as the rest, though the golden one immediately bounds towards her, nearly barreling Myrcella in its enthusiasm. "Hey girl." Myrcella greets her steed as it rubs its forehead with her armor-covered chest. For a pat, Myrcella only pets it before turning to look at her other friends. Also, greeting their own, It feels surreal for her. She's always known that the main purpose of the Griffons would be the edge that they need for the wars that would ever threaten Rivendell. Yet last time they are doing this, it is in a time of peace. And Myrcella never thought that she would face another war. Twice are enough. Thank you very much. Hey, the familiar scent of Deliana once more wafts over her senses, calming the majority of her thoughts as she smiles at her lover and fiancé. Are you all right, Sella? She asks. Myrcella simply nods. Just nervous, is all. I am leading everyone after all, Myrcella admits with a nervous smile at her lover. Hey, none of that mopey crap, Deliana chides, lifting her chin up. You will do great. Remember, the qualities of a good leader is not only about how good or charismatic one is, but also knows when to recognize her failings and listen to the advice of those who do. Listen to Draco and the rest of the lords for the plans. But at the end of the day, it is your decision that would be the final one. Sella, understand. I understand. Myrcella just nods. Good, now smile. We have a speech to say. She grins, making Myrcella blink as her brain tries to comprehend what she just heard. Too late. What? It is too late, though, as, without warning, Deliana pushes her to the forefront of the open arch, where she can see the entirety of everything from the regular citizen of Rivendell to the proud members of the Silver Knights Order cheering at her presence. Citizens of the free territories of Rivendell, I present to you our future monarch-to-be, the Princess Myrcella Baratheon, booms Deliana as everyone rigorously cheers at the presence of their liege, also at the open arch. You planned this, didn't you? Myrcella hisses in accusation at her lover, who only grins cheekily at her. I aim to please Sella. I aim to please. Deliana simply cheerily replies, much to Myrcella's annoyance as she is nudged even forward where everyone can now see her. Gulping, Myrcella smiles brightly, and confidently she hopes, as she raises a hand in hello to the gathered citizens. Once maybe she might have been embarrassed at being put in display in front of all these people. Under Deliana's tutelage, however, she has become confident enough at being forced into such crowds. The life of a High Lord, or royalty in her case, after all, involves being associated with crowd interaction like this one today. They're going to be the one fighting for your name. Sella, make sure that you make the speech good and inspiring, whispers Deliana at her back. Myrcella resists the urge to scowl at her lover's teasing. Way to put on the pressure, Delia, she replies through the corner of her mouth before focusing once more on the crowds below. Soldiers of Rivendell! Today we march to war. Tomorrow we claim our victory. I cannot think of much better people that I would trust my life unto for the future ahead. I would not speak of defeat, for we do not march to defeat. Rather we go to and claim the future that awaits us. So all I can say, my brave men and women, is thank you from the bottom of my heart for supporting my claim. Glory awaits us, so we march through dust, rain, and mud we march, unto victory we march. When all else fails, we prevail. The shouts of thousands of voices respond loudly that it seems the very air vibrates. Now confident of her performance, Myrcella turns to Deliana, who is standing at the side of Rhaenys, and Emilia, both wearing their personalized touch of armor. Shall we? Myrcella asks, looking at Deliana. Fine, good speech, by the way, replies the dame with a shrug, marching past Myrcella, but not after planting a solid kiss at her lips first, in public. Better let everyone know you are mine before we go our separate ways. Sella, the confident woman, says, licking her lips, even as everyone down below murmurs at the rather public spectacle. Delia, should we really be doing this, where everyone can see? Myrcella can't help but ask nervously. She and Deliana, after all, have undertaken pains to make sure that their relationship would not become public. We should. Remember, you are going to be the queen, Sella, and the number one rule of being queen is that you can do whatever you want to do, and damn those who say otherwise. Now come, our armies are waiting. Without further ado, the Lady of Rivendell jumps from the ark, followed immediately by the whooping sounds of Emilia and Rhaenys. Also following suit, a second behind her, show-offs. Myrcella simply shakes her head before also leaping off the ark into open air, giving off a whoop of her own. The first time she has done this, she almost pissed herself in fear. Right now, though, a loud screech emanates from the air, followed by a golden griffin flying below her, which Myrcella lands on gracefully. The saddles are specially made to absorb impact, else her thigh bones might have cracked upon contact. As it is, she easily recovers as she flies with her three other friends, each with a griffin of their own. Whatever happens for tomorrow, Marcella would not exchange it for moments like this one. Sky on the road to the bloody gate. Lyanna happily leans on her Gryphon and leisure as an annoyed Godric flies slowly in order for the cantering Knights of the Silver Order and the Death Dealers below not to be left behind. One would think that in this time of slugfest, again, of the Seven Kingdoms, she would be a tad bit concerned and stressed. The former might be right a bit. War is something that one should always not take lightly, but she already has plans in motion. A better reason is that the slugfest would not be aimed at her directly and the people she cared about. It is such a shame that Ned Stark and Bobby B had to die, though. She liked both of them, despite the former having the humor of an ice cube and the latter being grisly sometimes to look at. It is a blunder of the Hidden Ones, and they are already doing overtime to compensate for such mistake by being extremely accurate to the letter on their reports to her. No point crying over spilled milk. However, and even Lyanna would admit that she underestimated Jaime's reaction to Joffrey's displacement as heir. He, after all, not only murdered his father, but also the king, the Hand, and an assortment of lords and ladies of the realm that day, thus kickstarting the new slugfest that they are being caught on. King Stannis, after all, would be gunning for Joffrey's head at King's Landing. King Renly would be dead within this week. She can literally feel the foul magic of that red woman already starting to take shape with an inherent desire to murder the dandy fop in 5 different ways. King Beorn would be sending his reavers north where the Knights of Rivendell would tear them to pieces. The Ironborn are powerful on their ships. In the land, not so much, unfortunately. King Joffrey is no threat as he still dwells in his delusion that he is the king of the 7 kingdoms already, and he can do as he pleases. The moron is still unable to grasp it in his head that only the Crown lands and the Westerlands would be supporting his bid for the throne. Lyanna, of course, is not worried about Myrcella facing off against Jaime Lannister and the forces of the Westerlands. She has Emilia and Rhaenys with her alongside Elder Marcus and Draco. They would not lead her astray. The entirety of the Blackguard legions also are better than your average Westerosi. Add the might of the Riverlands and the North that she heard just marched past the 2 towers. She would have reinforcements and backup for the battle she is about to face. No, Myrcella would be able to win this fight. Of that she is sure. With her victory, it would cement her reputation as the correct contender for the throne. This allows Lyanna, of course, to pursue her own interests. With a force of nearly 3,500 Silver Knights from the Order alongside 1,000 Death Dealers and another 2,000 skirmishers, she would be facing the Knights of the Vale in their entirety of 20,000 men at the open plains near the Bloody Gate. One would think that it is madness to face knights out in the open with a severe disadvantage on numbers. Normally it is, but Lyanna has magic, which is a great cheat in all caps. Yes, Myrcella might have her victory, but Lyanna would not be Lyanna if she at least does not achieve something that tops even that of her fiancés. Once she deals with the Vale, she can then turn her eyes down south to Stannis and the Reach. She already has plans on each, and what she just needs is for all of it to come beautifully together. The real war, after all, would not be fought here, but up there in the north, where that army of necromancers is amassing their forces. Only when they are all down and under will then Lyanna be satisfied that her legacy of greatness would be secure. The Golden Tooth, Westerland. The Golden Tooth, ever since time immemorial, has always been the bulwark and staging grounds of the Westerland armies when they head out east. With its strategic positioning, the keep, despite not as large as the rest of the castles of the west, stands as a strong bulwark. Its walls are highly maintained, the parapets always repaired, and the arrows and weapons are always kept well stocked. House Lefford itself gets a daily stipend from Casterly Rock in the continuing productiveness of the Tooth. Never let it be said that Tywin is one of those lords who does not recognize the importance of the castles on his land. It would be hard for a large army to assault the Tooth head-on in its prime and ready state. Even with a force of 500 men, one can hold thousands at bay if they are well stocked and well trained, which they are. Now with Sir Jaime Lannister gathering the forces of the West behind it, the Tooth serves its purpose once more as a shield against any Riverland force that might pose a threat against the gathering Westerlanders. To attack the Tooth with a large number of men is folly in its ready state. To infiltrate it with a few, however, is possible. Are you sure about this, Lord Emdur? Asks a nervous Petrek Mallister, looking nervously at the high walls. I am. answers the heir of Riverrun, crouching over the brushwood, the nightlight barely making them visible underneath the looming stairs of the Golden Tooth's walls. I asked Lucas Blackwood to make a sortie against the front gate to distract the guards so that we may slip from the side. As if on cue, powerful explosions can be heard somewhere at the north, courtesy of the makeshift catapults made by House Blackwood that is right now making their planned attack. Edmure only beckons for his men to follow as he and the rest cross the distance between them and the now empty parapets. Between the 6 of them, they are carrying a long wooden pole with Edmure at the front. Reaching the bottom of the wall, instead of stopping, Edmure plants his feet on the stone before angling his body to be pushed forward as he runs vertical up the walls, using the pole as a support with his men pushing it forward horizontally, then slowly upward to keep him going. At the back, however, Robert Page and Mark Piper stands ready with the modified crossbows on loan from the armories of Rivendell. Unlike a regular Westerosi crossbow, the bolt action of this weapon bites deep compared to its original counterpart. Aiming for a second, Robert Page estimates the distance and timing of Endure for a split second before firing. The bolt flies fast and true, lodging itself like a nail in the wall. It is in perfect timing for Edmure to finally reach the limit of the pole and cling to the bolt's body in order not to fall. The next crossbowman also aims slightly higher than the first, before also releasing his bolt for another handhold that the heir of Riverrun pulls himself into. Old Edmure might have fallen screeching to his doom already, but this new one is more nimble due to training and proceeded on where the next bolt would be, only for it to nearly skewer his hand as the crossbowman misfires and the bolt bounces off somewhere in the middle of his fingers. "Have you been drinking?" Edmure can hear Mark hissing at Robert Page before shaking his head as he fires his own crossbow bolt to the wall, which Edmure wastes no time grabbing to haul himself up. Within a minute, he is almost at the top before he turns back to his men, who give off a signal of guard. Nodding, Edmure pauses as he waits for a sleepy-eyed Lefford guard to walk past before hauling himself up the parapet, using the momentum to grab the guard's head and slam it to the stone. He is out cold immediately. Rushing, Edmure ties the rope to one of the wall's indents before throwing it over the side. The rest of the Riverlanders are immediately over it in a minute. "So where's the storehouse?" asks Edmure to Ellery Vance, who points to a series of stone houses connected with another side-by-side. With nary a word, the Tully raiding force rushes to their objective, with Mark and Robert putting down the 2 guards to the entrance, who barely registers the raiders. With the distraction at the gate, it is easy for the raiders to break in the wooden door. Upon entering the storehouses, Edmure can't help but whistle at what he's seeing. It seems that Tywin is more generous than he imagined. There are almost 2 years' worth of supply here for 500 men. Salted meat, wine, oil, bread, rum, beer, barley, beans, wheat, water, and of course an ever-present stash of Kevin Lannister's rice barrels. Tywin is not kidding about making sure that the Golden Tooth is well supplied. "All right, whistles the Goldbrook heir. How do we plan to do this, Ed?" "The oil," Edmure points, kicking open one of the barrels, spilling its precious contents on the straw floor. "Break them open and make sure to line them up to the stashes of beer and rum. We burn this entire place down." "Such a shame for good wine," sighs Robert, taking one of the bottles with the label of Dornish Vintage before Mark slaps some sense into him. "Hustle, people. We have no idea how long till they notice the absent guards," hisses Edmure, pulling his friends' heads out of the gutter as they each grab an oil barrel and start spreading the slimy stuff all over. For Edmure, it is almost an eternity when it is only 20 minutes before they're done. As it is, he signals for the rest of his retinue to make a run for it back through their entrance before lighting up the torch, which he places in the line of oil at the ground. Within seconds, I burst aflame before crawling like an enraged lizard heading to the storage areas. Edmure can feel the heat of the explosion even as the entire castle shakes as he crawls down the wall and back to the safety provided by the dark. Slow. Dragonstone. The harbors of Dragonstone have always been large, seeing that it almost becomes a relic for the Targaryen kings of old. As a remembrance of their history and family, it has always been maintained and flourished to the best of their ability. It is the place where Aegon the Conqueror and his wives had lived before they decided that the rest of Westeros would be ripe for glory and unity. In the more practical side of things, however, Dragonstone is a dark and unsustainable fortress. Almost nothing grows on the barren place, and there are no large pasture grounds. Thus, to sustain the place and the people that garrison it, the only way to deliver to them supplies by fair number is by the sea, thus the reason for the rather large harbor. Dragonstone can contain thousands if needs be, after all. Now, in its current setting, the fleet of Stannis Baratheon, formerly the Royal Fleet, docks on its many harbors intertwined to one another by beams of wood and thick chains to protect them from bashing against one another by the tempest of the open seas. Now, almost 200 ships are moored there, with many more acting as supply ships for almost 20,000 Stormlanders gathered on Dragonstone in preparation for the attack on King's Landing. For Jon Stark, it is a daunting force looming over him. Of course, he has already made it. Currently, the longships of Dol Amroth are anchored in a small inlet only opposite of Dragonstone. It's shallow waters, low enough where ships can take cover from the ocean's bite. The inlet is also uninhabited with small wild game, and enough land that the Marines of Dol Amroth can disembark onto and stretch out their sea legs. There is also the unsaid fact that almost 50 Dornish ships, made from repurposed merchant ships, have joined with them under the command of Prince Oberyn Martell. Together with him are 5,000 Dornishmen, all experienced and bloodied. Doran apparently is not willing to commit Dorne to the fight, but the Mandalorian would like to pay his debts to the Lady of Rivendell for the opportunity to skewer the mountain himself. Thus, he is here with his kin. Other than that, though, Jon is stuck as he sits on his personal ship looking over the very detailed clay map of the battle zone at the table inside his personal ship, the snow. It has been delivered to him by one of the hidden ones that popped out of nowhere. Now here he is racking his brains as he tries to put together a plan that might defeat his enemies. The information dropped off by the hidden ones has a warning there that tells of the plans of Stannis to attack them tomorrow afternoon when the sea would be calm. There is no parley, after all, between him and the Darstag. Stannis had made it absolutely clear that the Baratheon children, Marcella included, were products of incest and not Robert's children. He also stated that anyone who supported their claim would be considered enemies of his and be offered no mercy, thus the lack of need of messengers. Rivendell made it clear that they would be fighting alongside the Crown Princess Marcella. This puts Jon in a quandary of facing an enemy with a much superior number than his and with better experience. He of course knows that his objective is to slow Stannis down for his invasion in King's Landing. Jon, however, knows that it is easier said than done. How do you slow down 200 ships with a much lesser attacking force? He can't help but kick himself for not listening to Maester Luwin's long-winded talks about the histories of the War of Westeros. He does not expect that he would be a custodian of a castle after all. That is more of Robb's forte, not his. The sound of a door creaking open makes Jon looks up to the familiar lithe form of Regright entering with 2 plates of seasoned beef covered with pickles and onions. He sighs as she jabs 1 plate to his hands, nearly bowling him over from the force.
I do not like it when you are late for food, Jon Stark. You have been cooped up in this room for 2 days. Eat, barks the fiery woman.
Regright, there's no time. I really need to eat. Yes, ma'am. Jon half salutes before taking a knife and fork and eating his offered dinner. 2 days, Jon. 2 days. I know you are stressed, but I don't understand why you are having so much problem with this. Our enemy is in front of us. We should just rush them head on, comments his wife, fiddling with the windows of his room. You're not stuffy in here. The room is too hot. Jon resists the urge to sigh. Despite everyone's best efforts, Witchai cannot fully let go of her wilding attitude of simplicity. Gods, he loved her, but she is always one who prefers simplicity than long, twisting plans. Why is this window so shutly tight? And with a powerful heave, the hinge broke without warning under Wright's ministrations, sending the powerful sea wind outside, spiraling inside. Jon is totally caught off guard as scrolls, quills, papers start flying around like a mini tornado inside. Immediately the doors of his cabin are thrown open as guards pour inside in alarm of the sudden ruckus they must have heard outside. As everyone tries to make a sense of the chaos, Jon sees it. His candle has fallen on the clay map, more importantly near the mini-ship replicas of wood being burned as the strong wind drives the flames forward, engulfing ship after ship. The Vale Road to the Bloody Gate. Deliana watches, in no small amount of amusement at the line of dust below her. That is the entirety of the gathered armies of the Knights of the Vale and their supply train. The Eastlanders, under the command of Lysa Tully, have ridden hard here after the news that a host of Rivendell is almost there at the Bloody Gate. They have, after all, taken their sweet time gathering and armoring themselves for the war to come. Thus, they have been caught almost off with their pants down by the appearance of their foe at their entrance door. Now here they are, rushing as if the very hounds of hell are after them, as they try to make up for lost time. Not one of them suspects that they have been all duped by the well-mastered, laid plan of the Lady of Rivendell, and they are all dancing at her fingertips. Right now, Diliana smiles as Godric hovers over the clouds, giving her the best view of the terrain down below. The Morons do not even glance once up top. If they do, however, all they would see is a speck of dust at the sky. Diliana, after all, would not endanger the entirety of this operation simply by being careless. It seems my suspicions are right, Diliana thinks as she observes the men of the Vale down below. Almost all that she sees are either knights or light cavalry. The Vale, when marshaled, all in all, including levies, can number almost 50,000. However, when it is lords, knights, and their men-at-arms only, almost 20,000. In a way, it is wise. The different castles of the Vale are connected through the mountain passes by rocky terrain. It would be hard to gather the levies in time, with those levies composed usually of the sickly and underfed peasant who would not be up for the trek. Either way, 20,000 is still a fair large enough number, especially against the 5,000 that Diliana is bringing to bear against it. Thus the reason why she is here flying high in the air. To be able to grab a victory against the well-armored knights and heavy cavalry, she would need to be the one to force them in a battlefield of her choosing, else they would simply steamroll over her forces. None of her soldiers, especially the Death Dealers, have been pleased with her decision to fly ahead and giving them standing orders to march to the stream of Erech, somewhere near the Bloody Gate. She has overruled them, though, and here she is, eyeing her prey, which is the big wagons and carriages that is the supply train for the Valemen. They, like the knights and their cavalrymen, are riding quite hard due to the haste towards the Bloody Gate in a snake-like pattern over the treacherous mountainside roads. 20,000 men and their horses are no easy number to feed, especially with the fact that said 20,000 have stuffy lords and self-important knights in them. Add the horses and you would need to prepare a lot of provender for them to remain in an able condition to fight. She would bet her Valyrian spear that the lords would not be willing to conduct a long campaign with their sensitive tummies crying out in hunger. The plan is simple for Diliana: destroy the supply train, force the army of the Vale in the battlefield of her choice, win the battle, and revel in her new achievement of glory and fame. Raising her hand high in the air, she immediately can feel the strain as her magic reaches out to the powers of nature around her. Nature magic is sensitive, like pulling piece at the concrete with your fingers. You have to exert effort to channel it. Once her magic gathers enough, Diliana mutters her incantation, Proxima Bombarda, Maxa, and points her pointing finger at the mountainside above the hurrying Valemen. With a powerful crack of thunder, the lightning strikes powerfully like a judgment of the gods. A mighty explosion occurs upon impact, ripping stone, asphalt, sand, and dirt. Of course, gravity did the rest as the pieces rolled downward, a death trap of a landslide. The Valemen simply has no chance. Those unlucky enough to be caught in the landslide are brought down screaming and crying as they are swept down the mountain. The others result to pandemonium. With their fast acceleration and the narrow road, the sudden break of the others at the back of the lines catches off guard the others following them. Immediately they are like dominoes bouncing over one another, crashing and slipping, with many falling to their doom at the sides. A large number also have been thrown off their horses all over the line via impact and collision. Those at front also suffer as many attempted to look back to check the sudden chaos. Some fell off the path to their doom due to lack of attention. Others also tried to put the brakes and thus repeated the doom of those at the center and back lines. As for the supply train that Diliana has been aiming for, none of it survived. Too fast and caught off guard by the sudden chaos, they crashed to one another as many at the front attempted to put their wagons to a stop. Horse-drawn transportation apparently does not do well in sudden stops of acceleration. Whatsoever that remain of the supply train are broken pottery, spilled water, and food on the muddy ground. And of course, dead bodes. Now, as the dust fells, followed by the groaning and crying of dying and wounded men, None can hear the maniacal laughter of victory by a certain lady of Rivendell up high in the sky. Riverlands, Riverrun. Marcella resists the urge to slap her neck for the umpteenth time, courtesy of the mosquitoes currently buzzing all around. Around her, the entirety of the Blackguard legions is setting up temporary camp before they make their final trek tomorrow, heading for the Golden Tooth. They are not alone, of course. At her right flank is the Tully forces with nearly 7,000 men. Apparently the 10,000 is less than expected, with the 3,000 making a run for it. At her right is also another 10,000 Northerners. Suffice it to say, Robb hasn't taken the news well of Ironborn planning to raid the north. Thus, under the command of the Karstarks, nearly 10,000 Northerners are sent running back the way they came from to defend their shores against the Reavers. As for Marcella, here she sits in her own personal tent, watching the soldiers run back and forth as they go off to follow their orders. She has been a tad bit concerned when Deliana assigned the entirety of the army to her. She has been expecting, after all, to be the one in charge of everything. Color her surprised when all she has been doing is sitting her pretty arse, while everyone brings to her final decisions, which she simply has to say yes to. In a way, Marcella knows she's lucky. Not every lord or lady has advisors as competent as the ones Rivendell have. This march also reminds Marcella once more of the lands of Westeros. All in all, while Rivendell is paradise incarnate and King's Landing is, well, the den of vipers, despite bathed in opulent riches, the rest of the lands are mud, dust, and sweat. It is a jolt to Marcella about the full extent of control she would have. She would not be ruling over the lords only, but to these teeming masses who live and die under the lords and ladies of the realm. The sound of shouting suddenly erupts from the camp of the Starks, making Marcella pop her head out the entrance of her tent to see the reason of the ruckus. Immediately, Rhaenys is at her side, swords drawn. Her best friend has been not more than 10 feet away from her most of the time ever since they left Rivendell. Looking at her questioningly, Rhaenys simply shrugs at the silent question. I don't know what's going on, Sella. Marcella is just ready to call out one of the Blackguards coming from that direction for information, but a scowling Emilia soon stomps towards her. Sella, you need to talk some sense to those idiots, the Riverlanders, and many of the Northmen want to chop the Greyjoy boy's head off for Balon Greyjoy's invasion at the north. Luciella simply grimaces at that. It can be easily forgotten that the Greyjoy boy is a hostage due to how well the late Lord Stark treated him. Now, however, it seems that the faults of the old Kraken is putting the younger in peril. Come, attend me please, you two, Marcella says to Emilia and Rhaenys, who nods before they follow her as they head to the Stark camp. 10 Blackguard members immediately follow them, also as an honor guard, as they march on the muddy road. The scene that greets them, suffice it to say, is not pretty. Many Riverlords and some Northerners apparently took it to themselves to serve the king's justice to the Squid with their bare hands. Said Squid looks like he has been pummeled all the way to Kingdom Come, with how many bruises he has, collecting in his face. Beside him, at the mud also, and covered in grime, is Robb Stark, currently fending off the attackers off his brother. Enough of this. Marcella barks with a raised voice, making everyone turn to her direction. Taking a few seconds or so before realizing who is speaking, before they are all bowing to her. What is this that you are all doing? We are all going to war tomorrow, and this is the kind of attitude you all get. She reprimands before raising a hand as someone tries to protest, silencing him. I know the circumstances as to why you are hitting the North Sword here. Right now, however, we have bigger fish to fry. We focus on that, and we deal with this problem. Understood? Yes, Your Highness, the chorus of voices replies. Good, and you, Greyjoy. Marcella levels her stare at Theon, who wobbly gets to his feet despite his state before bowing. Yours, Hennes, he muffles out due to his swollen face. The only reason I am giving you this reprieve and not lopping off your head myself is because the Lord Eddard Stark deem you worthy of time and effort to raise. Plus, Robb Stark here seems ready to fight to the death for you. Make the mistake, however, of siding with any of your traitorous people, Greyjoy, and the Lords punching you to death would be the least of your worries. Am I understood? Yes, may, Liddy. The Squid nods his head, quickly making Marcella look at the other lords one more time for good measure before walking off with Emilia and Rhaenys in tow. Good work, Sella. That would remind them who is at the very top of the command, comments Emilia. Thank you, Marcella honestly replies. All this command overlord thingy is still a little bit new to her. Did I do the right thing? Sparing the Greyjoy kid? Maybe yes, Maybe Nocella? It is one of those things you leave up to fate. Sometimes the coin will get heads, and you'll be lucky for your choice. On the other hand, it could be the exact opposite. I see. Emilia only grins. Cheer up Shella, he's not a major player, and sparing him probably earns you some brownie points with the young Lord Stark. I don't think he'll be pleased if you decided to lop off the head of his best friend. Marcella can't find anything to reply to that, so she only snorts. Tomorrow would certainly be interesting. The Redwoods, 2 hours as the crow flies from the Golden Tooth. There would be many tales talked about the battle under the Redwoods. Many historians, philosophers, and analysts would be debating about it for the centuries to come. There would be great questions, after all, about who really lose the most during the great battle. No one, however, can deny that during this fight for the right of the Iron Throne, the Lannister forces under Ser Jaime Lannister are crushed once and for all. Jaime is no fool. He knows that it would be completely stupid to challenge the enemy in a ground of their choosing. However, even if the decision not to adhere on said wisdom is folly, sometimes one can never avoid it, smacking right into one's face with the force of a sledgehammer and whatever deity that is that controls karma. The raids of Endor Tully have done their part. At first they are nothing more than nuisances, pinpricks and knife wounds to the 50,000-strong army gathered by Jaime against those who challenged Cersei's final will. His uncle warned him to respond to the raids, but Jaime didn't listen. After all, what were the 10-man raids against the mass numbers he was mobilizing? Before Jaime realized the trap, it was too late. The Tully heir hadn't been aiming to reduce his numbers, but to cut off his supplies. Sure, the entire army still had their current stuff with them, but the food, water, weapons, and things needed for a battle had all been cut off. This basically pushed Jaime to force a battle, lest he suffer the consequence of his ignorance. Jaime is no stranger, war after being in participation during the Battle of Pike. This is his first time, however, commanding a large army and facing off against a well-known efficient one like the Death Dealers. That is why Jaime is here right now, facing off against the 30,000 men gathered opposite of him over the field. He can see them all, a combination of Blackguard at the center line, the Riverlanders at the right, and the Northmen at the left. He almost wants to scoff at their attires. Compared to the highly equipped and armored soldiers of House Lannister, those of House Stark and the Riverlands wear mostly boiled leather armors with the occasional plate or chainmail. It seems only the soldiers of Rivendell would be his main adversary, as he expects. Unlike the other motley groups milling about, they look professional and disciplined. We finish this, men, once and for all, in the name of Joffrey Baratheon. Advance and march. Jaime roars, leveling his sword at the gathered forces arrayed against him. Any stupid commander might have ordered the charge to be head first. Basic combat doctrine, after all, states that in the case of overwhelming numbers against the enemy, it is better to play it simple and conventional to avoid confusion. The only reason Jaime, however, does not follow that teaching to the letter is because he is fighting against Rivendell forces. If it is the North or the Riverlands, it would be another story, but the forces of the Tully bastard never play conventional, and it is always wise to be wary. Sure, he cannot see her, but his daughter, with Cersei, have been trained and groomed under her. He would eat his boot if she has not a nasty surprise waiting for him and his men. Either way, Jaime, however, has given the order already that she be captured only, not killed. Make no mistake, he would crush every single man and woman in her army, and maybe have her roughed a bit, for this is war, but he would never end her life. He is her father, after all. Rivendellian center lines. Marcella stands side by side with her own royal guard, amidst the Rivendell line. She has at first opted to fight as Deliana does, via donning an outfit of a black guard, but Emilia and Rhaenys shot it down immediately. Her golden armor is made out of the finest steel, with a combination of Valyrian and Delianite. As her Ray so eloquently puts it, it would stop a battle axe from carving your chest, but it would still hurt like hell. Thus, as usual, Marcella acquiesces to their request. Is Marcella afraid? Yes, she is. She is going after all against her uncle, and already it seems that her uncle is no fool like the majority of lords of Westeros. Instead of a headlong charge, he is taking the cautious approach by marching his army step by step towards them. Draco has made it clear to her that he has a plan. What plan? Marcella doesn't exactly know, since she spent the majority of her time mingling with the men, making sure they see her, and inspire them for the coming battle. Now here she is, side by side with a cadre of death dealers with Emilia and Rhaenys. While they might have used the Griffons, Draco has stressed that it would be counterproductive to his plan at the moment. Thus on foot they stand. This is one way to clear the ale. Smell of 1,000 armpits. Grumbles her Ray, making Marcella smile beneath her opulent winged helm. Leave it to her best friend to change the mood of battle. If we're lucky, my lady, they would smell us and run away, comments one of the death dealers. I doubt that. With how much the Lannisters crawl all over King's Landing, they might be immune to it by now. The city breathes the smell of shit every day, after all, retorts Amelia, making chuckles to occur all over the line. What the fuck? Who touched my arse? I'm no sword swallower. The indignant voice of Elder Marcus erupts, making everyone within hearing range laugh at that. The laughter, however, died as a cheer erupts along the advancing Lannister line, their shields raised and ready. 50,000 men are glaring at the golden figure they aim to bring down. Are we ready, soldiers? The call of Watcher Draco shouts from the front. Yeah, 20,000 voices sound off in reply. When I call the order, give ground. One step at a time, we reel them in under the eaves of trees. Then we claim victory. 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 Victory, he repeats. Victory! Victory till we set the crown on our queen's head. Trust me and trust the man beside you. Shield wall, Daenerys, like clockwork, the entire Blackguard lines, locked shields and ready on their formation. Unlike the War of the Faith, all of them are sufficiently trained for times like this one today. The Northmen and Rivermen also follow suit, though they a bit more haphazardly as their levies imitate their more professional counterparts. First step, back. Draco roars, and with a grunt, the entire line falls backward. Second step, back, he repeats. And with another heave, the ranks follow. The confusion in the eyes of their enemies can be seen by their sudden retreat, and already some of their commanders are urging their lines a bit forward, eagerly anticipating fear of their enemy. Step back, the command rings again, and the line obeys once more. By then, it is obvious as with a howl of glee. The first line, composed of mercenaries, roar forward, eager to get to grips with the forces of Marcella. The familiar tension of an incoming fight once more grips the princess. It is not fear, but one of, rather, tenseness and expectation. Many along the Riverlands and the north are also dealing with it, as more than one can be seen, pissing himself or vomiting. Even the Blackguard members are also becoming tense with nervousness. Hear me, men and women here today. The sudden voice of Elder Marcus booms from one end of the line to the other. When the clarion call sounds, we march out to defend our liege and lady. That which is sublime we shall protect. That which is good we shall defend. Hear us, for we are men, men that would stand against all that we hold dear. We, soldiers, are the vanguard and shield. Cheers erupt from the entirety of the line as the impromptu speech livens up. Everyone's spirits once more. Marcella, seeing a chance once more of morale, draws her sword and lifts it up to the air. When all else fails, her voice is clear and loud that it surprises even her. We prevail! The roar of 10,000 voices erupt all over the Rivendell line. Winter is coming! Family, duty, honor. The other two allies also joins in to the cheering, emboldened by their lords. Their calls are perfectly timed as the first of Draco's traps kick in, or rather, been stepped at. In another place, another time, caltrops are perfect for ruining any vehicle's day, able to take out tough tires. In this medieval backwater period, however, they are twice as dangerous. Saboteurs who rise on the dawn have planted the entire few yards of Marcella's army with the sharpened star spike. Easy to make, easy to form, they are by the hundreds. Leather boots and hides provide little to no protection against the steel stakes. Yells of pain and alarm echo from the Lannister front as entire forward formation buckle and fall, many not rising again. Of course, due to the army's momentum, those at the second and third line are jostled forward, making them scream out as they resist futilely before stumbling and crashing to the waiting claws of the deadly trap. In the matter of seconds, dozens upon dozens are crying out in pain and agony as the Lannister lines stall. This, of course, results to cheers from Marcella's army, who witness many of their foes falling down before they can even lay a finger on them. Knights, abandon your horses and lead the way. Crush the metal spikes under your boots, barks out Jaime. Within moments, almost 200 knights are dismounted and are walking through the caltrops. Unlike the regular infantry, knightly steel boots are somewhat resistant to the sharp objects, flattening many of them by sheer body mass alone. Archers. Knock. Draw. Loose. Lannister longbowmen fired by the hundreds, the arrows making a shade over the beating heat of the sun. Shield to shield! Drop down. The call goes out, and immediately the army of Marcella tucks down for cover as arrows pelt them. While majority of the arrows get stuck on shields, others found their mark, especially those who have the luck to fall on the levies, who are wielding nothing but sharpened pickaxes, knives, or the occasional club. Screams of the dead and dying can be heard as the entire line reforms after the barrage. Step over the dead. Charge. Orders one of the Lannister generals whipping the Lannister army to frenzy as they walk over their wounded and dead comrades before charging en masse to the still recovering line of Marcella's army. With an ugly crunch, the two armies finally come to grips over one another as it becomes shield to shield. Swords, spears, pikes try to cut through the gaps of the lines as it devolves into a push and fight situation. Men fell on both sides, either wounded or dead. A spear comes out from nowhere and cuts straight through the throng of men, cutting Amelia down as she is pierced on her upper shoulder. Amelia. No. The sudden pained voice of her Ray can be heard as the Castellan of Rivendell fell clutching her wound. We have to fight back. Second line. Hold, shouts Marcella, and immediately the pushing paused as the entire Blackguard second line halts the slowly backing of the front. Push! And with a mighty heave, the massive circular shields of the entire front line slams outward, throwing the Lannister soldiers off guard before spears meet them like snake tongues. Men cry out and fell before remaining unmoving. Enraged, their comrades try for another push, only to be met by a wall of shields. Push! The shields bash outward again, and the bloody process repeats again as the stunned Lannister men get eviscerated by spears of the Blackguard front lines. Step back. The call rings out one more, and with a heave, the lines once more move, and another, and another. For King Joffrey, the cries can be heard out as the Lannister soldiers and mercs hack those who are unfortunate enough to be left behind by the falling backlines or dragged out through the bloody melee. Step back. The call rings out once more, and the entire line moves, though this time the Lannister forces are committing their reserves, that the entire line is buckling from the amount of men bearing down on them. We have to make a stand, or we will be overrun. Marcella calls out to Draco, who shakes his head in negative. We are almost there. We stick to the plan, Your Grace. Fuck. Marcella curses beneath her breath before following the order to make another step back. I see her. I see the princess. She's in the middle line. A golden armored figure with white bloody cloak suddenly shouts, pointing to where Marcella is stationed in. Cut off her head, and we will win this fight. Lorch! The sudden hiss from Ray makes Marcella turn to her best friend, who looks in hatred at the man. He's the one who stabbed me 100 times before throwing me to the sea, Sella. Today he dies. Marcella only nods grimly before following another step back call from Draco. They are caught totally off guard, though, as without warning the center line of the Blackguard line buckles. What is going on? Marcella demands, as she is almost thrown off her feet. They are forming a wedge like a ram. My lady, we have to move you. Elder Marcus is cut off as the center line once more bucks again, as the wedge of shields and men slam like a pincer on the Blackguard lines, throwing men and women off their feet. They are breaking through. We must. Yeah, with a mighty war cry, the pincer move of the enemy once more crashes on the weakened line of shields, this time successfully breaking through as men are trampled underfoot. Immediately, Lannister soldiers pour onto the breach, hacking and screaming madly as they attempt to maintain the cut on the Blackguard lines. They have broken through. Protect the princess. Rhaenys' voice calls out, her swords flashing as it decapitates two Lannister mercenaries at once. Like angry bees, the Death Dealers marshal to her side, their weapons doing their grim work, cutting and dicing anyone stupid enough to get near 5 feet of Marcella. Look, my lady, the trees! One of the Death Dealers call out, making Marcella turn and realize that indeed they have finally reached the end of their backing. General, she calls out loud, making the man at the front line also twist his head. Instantly, he realizes what she means, for he nods before grabbing a horn, which he blows in a ringing blast. It does not take long for anyone to find out what it means. In the span of a minute, riders carrying the banners of Rivendell, the Riverlands, and the North appear from the left, and the right following an enveloping pattern at each side. In the span of seconds, the entire Lannister army is in a panic, as they realize that they are being positioned in a double envelopment. Their ranks are scattered, and they are out of their clumped or square formation, the only hope of infantry against riding cavalry. Run him over, the commander of the cavalry forces. A giant Greyjohn roars, his battle axe crushing men left, right, and center. It is already over as far as Diliana can see it. The Lannister forces have no chance. They are trapped in an anvil and a hammer. They are literally powerless as the riders ride them over. The front line also seized the opportunity by advancing. With the pressure of the Lannister forces finally gone, Draco gives off the call to break formation and charge. Blackguard skirmishers, followed by a bloody-looking Edmure, Tully, lead the charge as they hack and bash through anything that has a red color on it. In the end, it lasted an hour more before the last of the fighting died down. It might have been longer if not for the Griffons appearing without warning and causing rampage on the thickest of battle, their claws, beaks, and wings sending body parts flying everywhere. The mercenaries are quick to surrender, the cowards that they are exposed. The Lannister levies take a little more bloodying, but the Lannister lords and their men-at-arms mostly died to the last man. They have, after all, tortured many a riverman peasant during the initial stages of the war, and many feared to be subject to the same treatment. The last casualty, however, is the duel between Her Rey and Amory Lorch. It is not even a duel, more like a torture on the latter's side. The man has little skill, and he succumbs to the 1,000 paper-thin cuts Rhaenys inflicts on him. Your Grace, your prize, Jaime Lannister, the Golden Lion of the Westerlands. A sallow-looking pale Northerner pushes a muddy and bloody-looking Jaime Lannister to fall in front of Myrcella. Uncle, she neutrally greets the man who is family to her in a way. Myrcella, he breathes out, making a swaggering, mocking bow. You look good in that armor. Very flattering on the battlefield. She has to resist the urge to punch his teeth off. Can't he see he is making it difficult for her not to give the order to chop his head off? She can literally hear the grinding of teeth of her retinue from the utter disrespect. Better get him off of here before Rhaenys disembowels him for good measure. Your army has fallen, Uncle. Surrender now, and you may keep your honor intact, she declares. I surrender Nice. I hope that it is in your hands I would be prisoned at, and not these uncouth barbarians who would not know the meaning of decency even if it slapped them in the face. He looks mockingly at the Riverlanders and Northerners who once more looks like they would want nothing more than to cut off his head. Get him out of my sight, and somewhere secure where no one can get pissed off and accidentally kill him, she orders to the death dealers, who none too gently dragged her still smirking uncle away. You are not going to kill him, your grace, asked Edmure Tully angrily. No. Myrcella grimaces at the furious look of the future Lord of Riverrun, who looks ready to retort. Before you explode, Lord Admir, please remember that he is a decorated knight and Lord Paramount of the Westerlands. At best, I can only send him to the wall, which I intend to do, she adds in a final tone, making the man swore and march off with his retinue away. You better keep an eye on him, your grace. Angry lords are always snippy in troubled times like we have today. The pale-looking man who delivered her uncle to her comments making Myrcella move her attention to him. What is your name, soldier? Ramsay Snow, your grace. I led the Northern Cavalry against the Lannisters in my brother's absence, he bows. Your brother, Lord Demeric Bolton? He's the one who's supposed to lead the cavalry. I don't see him. Yes, your grace, he is suffering from bloody indigestion and has been confined to his tent due to his desire not to be seen, shitting his pants while riding. He asked me to lead the charge instead, he explains. I see. Good job bringing the Kingslayer to me, Ramsay Snow. Keep up the good work and I might even legitimize you in the future. Waves Myrcella off. I will do my best to live up to your expectation, your grace. He loudly declares before bowing once more. Nodding in affirmation, Myrcella looks at the bloodied army now, looking at her expectantly. Drawing her sword, she lifts it high up for all to see. Men and women, we have won. The cheers that followed can be heard all towards the heavens. Willigwiddy camp. 6 hours later. The aftermath after the battle can only be described as merry as the soldiers feast, drink, and fuck, at least in that order. The Blackguard Legionnaires only partakes of the two first and ditch the last. They have lived and grown, after all, under the umbrella of the Dame of Rivendell, who is well known of her disapproval about prostitution and public sex. The Northerners and the Riverlanders, however, enjoyed themselves fully at their camp followers, and that also of the Lannister army. Congratulations on the victory, Your Grace. It is well deserved. Thank you for standing with us. It is my honor, Lord Mallister. Please enjoy your evening. Marcella raises her cup to the Mallister heir, who bows before leaving with his retinue. While the men, after all, enjoy themselves fully about the fruits of their victory, for Marcella, the work continues. Such is the price of royalty. Lords of the participating battle and well-known knights take the time to make connections to her, which is mostly praising her about her participation during the fight. Sure, she might not have been at the thickest of it, but she was there getting herself dirty and bloody among the men, and they respect her for it. The men especially love the fact that their liege does not sit on the back like a pompous lady. The minstrels are already singing the song, "The Doe Who Gored the Lion." Even from where she is, she can hear the music of singing. Marcella just shakes her head as the men cheers on the minstrels. Part of her wants to object that she personally did not smite Jaime Lannister down, but Deliana had always taught her to let men be men. Thus, she let them enjoy their antics. So I guess that all that is left is kicking your brother off the throne of King's Landing, Cella, and then we can put your pretty ass on that throne of swords, right? The familiar voice of Emilia makes Marcella smile as she sees her protector and friend sit gingerly on the cushion at her side. "Emilia, you're all right already?" asks Marcella, taking note that the Castellan of Rivendell is not garbed with her Death Dealer armor, but instead with a black shirt and casual pants. "Yes, the healers let me out after berating me a lot," she rolls her eyes. "Spear, however, dug to the bone, and thus I should take it easy for a couple of days to let it heal fully. Sorry, Cella, but Rhaenys here would be your sworn sword for at least that time." "I am up for it, Emilia. I am not irresponsible. Most of the time," croaks out Rhaenys half-deep in her butterbeer mug. "Exactly, Rhaenys," laughs out the Castellan, much to Marcella's amusement. Seeing of which, I guess the rest of the campaign would be easier once we are done here. "Are you really sure about that, Emilia? About the campaign being easier? We still have Stannis and the Knights of the Vale to contend to other than King's Landing, and Lord Stannis would not be an easy lord to crack," points out Marcella. "Of course I'm sure, Cella. Our Lord Snow would hopefully weaken that dour-faced lord in the Vale. They're good as dead with Our Lady personally joining on the field against them." "I see. I wish I could have the same confidence as you do, Emilia. I still worry for her, despite knowing how capable Delia really is," Marcella admits. "It is alright to worry, Cella. You two are in a relationship after all, and you love her in ways that we could not. That only makes you even more special in our eyes," replies Emilia. Their small banner, however, is broken as, without warning, one of the hidden ones appear from nowhere, nearly startling the three of them at the bowing cloaked figure. "Princess Marcella, urgent report," the hidden one speaks out. "Domeric Bolton is dead. It was confirmed that the Bolton bastard has poisoned him. He plans to deal a blow to House Stark with the other dissidents of House Bolton, who is not happy with how different the deceased heir has been leading his house, especially with its relationship to House Stark." "When is he planning this blow, assassin?" asks Marcella, already standing up and putting on her armor. "While Rivendell and House Stark is not on the best of terms, they are still kin to her beloved, and that connection will always remain, no matter how much the Stark matriarch might bitch about it. Plus, Robb is not so bad, if only a little naive with how much he is spouting about honor. The poor boy is so determined to imitate his father that it is a bit frightening. Now, Your Highness, very well, hidden one. Alert Commander Draco, and anyone who is sober. Rhaenys, you're riding with me." Marcella whistles loudly, and in a minute, her golden gryphon is at the ground, followed by two others that belong to Emilia and Rhaenys. "Emilia, you are not coming with me," hisses Marcella, as the wounded Castellan hauls herself up to her own gryphon. "With all due respect, Cella, shove that order up your ass. I promise, my lady, I would not let you out of my sight, and I intend to keep that promise," answers Emilia grimly, as she climbs up her saddle. Marcella really want to argue, but the time pressure makes her grunt in full annoyance, knowing that every second is wasted. "Fine. But you are not getting off that gryphon under any circumstances." "No promises!" Marcella only grunts before she urges her ride to the air, the powerful wings taking her to the skies easily. Behind her, she can hear the griffons of both Rhaenys and Emilia also doing the same. Already, she can see the entirety of the Rivendell camp slowly gearing up as the light cavalry designed specifically for emergencies, like this sally out to the Northerners part of the camp. What is supposed to be a 20-minute ride via navigating the large number of tents, people, and other doodads is reduced to a 2-minute travel. It is plain for Marcella, however, to see that it is already too late. Blazing fires can be seen from above all over the Northerners' camp. Men are fighting, or rather killing one another. In any other circumstances, she would have stopped, but she has to stop the damage to Northern leadership and Robb Stark. Hail the young wolf! Forever young, hail! The sound of singing and jeers makes Marcella move her head to the source, only to almost lose his dinner at the sight. She has found Robb Stark, alright, or rather what is left of him. He is dead plain and simple, with Grey Wind's head sewed where his master's supposed to be. Men bearing House Bolton colors are parading the desecrated corpse around, cheering. Beside Robb, being pulled in a cart, is the still-breathing form of Theon Greyjoy, skinned and turned to a macabre of a squid, with his loose outer skin nailed all over the cart. Worse, he is still alive. A bloody and beaten Jaime Lannister is also being hauled with a collar on his neck, his missing right hand covered in a bloody bandage, while his left holds what seems to be a bloody figurine of a half-man made up of golden coins. There would be no words to explain what seized Marcella then. By nature, she is a gentle soul, barely able to hate people. Marcella desires to love and be loved in return. That is what offsets her to the other high lords and ladies of the realm. She knows how to care. However, even the gentlest of souls are capable of rage. Even the most docile sheep would bite and claw in the proper circumstance. This is what fills her now. With a bitter war cry echoed by her own Grayfen, Marcella plunges headfirst to the lines of the celebrating Bolton men. Like a thunderbolt, her Grayfen is among them, tearing, squawking, and clawing, sending men flying or running away in fear. Marcella herself has her sword drawn and are cutting and dicing anyone bearing the sigil of the bloody house. She's not Rhaenys' caliber when it comes to sword skill, but she is good enough. Swords, axes, knives hack at her, but her armor, forged by the best and brightest of Rivendell, protected her from the worst of it, as the powerful enchantments hold. In seconds, Rhaenys and Emilia is at her side, weapons also joining the fray, alongside their Grayfens. Men from House Bolton appear on every side corner, trying to drown them by sheer numbers. They are not alone, however. Surviving lords of the North, who have been fighting a survival battle, rally to the powerful trio. Umber, Forrester, Mormont, Glover, Karstark, all rallied to the fight, turning the massacre to a proper brawl. They would soon be joined by reinforcements from Rivendell's cavalry, and a half-drunk Blackfish, Tully leading a company of inebriated Riverlanders. By the time morning rises, the Bolton men would be all dead. Ramsay Snow would be missing, with reports from the Hidden Ones reporting soon that he has been seen leaving the camp before disappearing. The North, however, lost its leading Stark and nearly half its leadership. Not to mention untold number of men, the Blackfish would also be dead, with many Riverlanders and Rivendell a fair number of its light cavalry in the brawl. Theon Greyjoy would expire before the afternoon passes, and Jaime Lannister would be sent to the wall with his right hand missing. The golden figurine he has been clutching would be revealed as the corpse of Tyrion Lannister. A formal surrender would be instigated by Kevan Lannister, with him claiming fealty to her alongside the Westerlands. For the forces of Marcella, it is a somber victory with the heavy blow on her allies. The Battle of Red Woods is over. The Battle of Fiery Stone and Water, Isle of the Fair, random island opposite Dragonstone. Ever since he has been named as Castellan of Dol Amroth, Jon rather likes some of the perks that come with it. Good food, good service from his servants, the richness of the port city, and most importantly, the opportunity to oversleep if he wants to. With his bastard status before, Jon never gets to oversleep even during his younger days. He might have been protected by the will of his father to be raised as a son from his true-born wife, but that doesn't mean she takes every opportunity to make his life miserable. She tends to send a guard or a servant to poke, or rather kick Jon awake from his rooms at the earliest possible sign of the morning, no matter how tired or weary he is. As the Castellan of Dol Amroth, Jon can wake up in the middle of the afternoon and no one would blink twice about it. Of course, he's prevented from oversleeping much by Ygritte, who believes that it is never right to finish a day without accomplishing some work. Now, however, Jon wakes up of his own accord under the eaves of darkness. The operation that he plans to break Stannis' fleet and army once and for all would be a risky endeavor, and everyone who would be participating knows it. Ygritte has fought tooth and nail to be included, but he has disagreed. She would be, after all, needed for the second part of it. They have said their farewells to each other last night, just in case, and now no words are needed, as he gets up from their shared bed. "I will see you in the shores, my love, or in the embrace of the old gods," Jon whispers as he places a kiss on the side of her cheek before leaving their shared chamber. It is still dim and dark outside, as it is barely the rise of morning. 24 men, however, awaits him, saluting at the arrival of his presence. He merely nods at them. All of them, after all, are here of their own volition. Nothing is braver than the heart of a volunteer, as Draco teaches him during his time at Osgiliath. The operation they would be doing is almost a one-way ticket for any captain or his crew. Most of them, or maybe all of them, would not be walking alive from this. "Is everything ready?" Jon asks Kenji, the head captain of his Imperial fleet, and the one who would be helping Ysrite command once Jon starts his operation. Next to Jon, he is the most senior of his officials. Originally a local from Yichidi among the many peasants, the man has proven himself adept at commanding ships and captains. "We are ready, Lord Castellan. The fleet stands ready. With all due respect, my lord, He stops as Jon raises his hand. "Say no more, Captain. This is my operation, and my operation alone. I will not send men to die unless I shared the burden of command." He smirks at the man. "Besides, we are Northerners by spirit, if not in body after all. What kind of Northerners are we if good men and women charge headlong to danger and the one who leads them cower like a pup behind?" "Aye, my lord. Very well then. Fair winds, Lord Castellan. May your operation bring victory and honor to us all." "Likewise, Captain, await my signal and don't hesitate." Kenji only nods before stepping aside. Jon simply takes a deep breath before walking to the longship, waiting for him. Unlike the massive galleons fielded by the city of Dolanroth, the ships carrying the operation of Jon at its first stage would be longships packed with as much straw, cinder, and anything flammable that his fleet can scrounge up. The front of the longships have been cut off from its usual sharp, triangular, elegant design and replaced with straw dipped in tar and oil. Walking to the stern of the ship, Jon breathes in the crisp sea air before turning to the other 24 captains who have boarded their own ships. With a silent nod, the rowers immediately dip their oars to the side and start rowing. There are no cheers, no speech of victory, only silence as the longboats skim like herons over the water. They barely make a sound as they cross the strong waters of the stormlands that lead to Dragonstone. Jon would admit that he is terrified out of his wits as he stands there, bravely at the prow of his longboat. It takes all his willpower not to piss himself in fear. His men need a leader, and by the gods, he would be that leader. Speaking of gods, it seems the old gods are favoring them once more. A thick fog of white envelops the entire area, masking the approach of Jon and his ships. He has been banking that they would at least be able to reach midway before the first sound of alarm of Stannis' fleet is given. The cover of fog, however, increases that chance dramatically. It takes less than 20 minutes of silent paddling before they finally see the fleet of the self-declared King of Westeros. As Jon expected, the ships are tied by chains and beams to each other to keep themselves steady. While it is indeed a splendid sight and one worthy of morale to have 200 ships tied to each other, it has a glaring weakness. The waters around the Stormlands are wild and untamed, almost the same as the ones of Dol Amroth. While the Stormlords and men of their men-at-arms and vassals may be used to the sea, the same cannot be said for the regular rank-and-file levy and militia that makes up the majority of Stannis' forces. They are, after all, mostly farmers and craftsmen who manage the food supply, iron mines, and the random fishermen pulled from their households to fight for their lord's war. Thus, for a large force such as his, Stannis has no choice but to stabilize his ships with beams, chains, and ropes to prevent the majority of his levies from becoming seasick, and thus near useless on the coming battle. The sound of gongs and drums sounding in alarm at the opposite side of their island is the cue that Jon has been waiting for. Full sails, bombardiers, set the fronts alight, he barks out in order. Immediately, the full sails of the longships are spread open, the ships immediately kicking a notch in speed and acceleration as they catch the wind blowing to the north. The straw at the front of the ships are also set alight with a roar as the fire catches easily to the flammable oil and fat placed there beforehand. In the matter of seconds, 24 longships are also aflame as they hurtle towards the awaiting fleet of Stannis. The captains of the Baratheon royal fleet must have realized what Jon is up to, for the bells become even more frantic, and even at this distance, he can see men trying to separate the ships from one another, either by pushing the beams off, or futilely trying to cut off the chains binding them to one another. Arrows immediately pelt the upcoming longships, and Jon grimaces as he sees the decks being filled with archers and scorpions trying to stop his upcoming fire ships. Men fall and die, but the soldiers of Dol Amroth have already resigned themselves to this suicide charge, and they simply roar out their death knell as they maintain the charge of their ships. It is Captain Clambearer's ships who makes first contact with the Baratheon fleet. His crew is screaming as one by one they fell before the longship slams like an angry boar at the front of one of the ships. Straw, oil-enwrapped pig bladders, all burning, shower forward to the Baratheon ship, exploding at the tremendous impact force. Men scream out in pain and fear as the fire washed over them. The powerful blow of the wind heading north blows the fireball to at least dozens of ships at the side of it, repeating the process of panic. On other parts of the fleet, the other ships also slam forward, discharging their payload of fire to the Baratheon fleet, sending swathes of the prestigious and proud Baratheon royal fleet to go up in flames like cinders on the block. If anyone is looking from above, it would have made an amazing sight, like wood slowly being burned as the fire ships and their crew make contact with fires eating ships faster than men can blink. At the back of the fire ships, Jon can see the galleons finally moving forward, carrying with them the entirety of the army of Dol Amroth. He simply smirks. Leave it to Agradite to have an affinity for command. Of course, the casualties do not only belong to those of Stannis' fleet. Nearly every man on those fire ships that make contact are dead, with very few surviving. Those on the remaining fire ships that try to make contact with the middle and far side of Stannis' fleet are suffering under the barrage of arrows and stones from the Baratheons. Captain Chisu's longship looks almost like a porcupine as he leads his roaring ship to the middle part of the Baratheon fleet. His sailors are dead and dying as they fell under arrows, especially those manning the sails. Still they charge on as men with arrows sticking out of them grab the ropes, maintain the course as they crash to the nearest Baratheon ship at the middle of the fleet. Massive explosions immediately occur as the process starts once more. Sailors of the longship runs to the breach of burning wood, carrying each a flammable pig's bladder as they try to board the enemy ship. Spears meet them, and many do not even get the chance to cross. Those that do, however, only have one's choice: victory through death. Swords impale one man at least dozens of times, even as he lobs the burning pig bladder to the straw, making it explode upon impact. One other Marine makes a nosedive with his package at the provision barrels of the enemy ship. Immediately, the entire ship explodes into a ball of fire, which then infects the others surrounding it. The galleons of Dol Amroth sail slowly unscathed as they pass through a line of burning ships who are claiming the lives of others who survived the firestorm. Fire ships ram and explode upon impact on each side of the Baratheon fleet, the northern wind blowing the fiery immolation to their comrades and friends. Baratheon captains frantically shout and order men to separate the ships and sail out. With how firm they have made it to be, however, to provide stability to the levees, it is a futile effort as the firestorms reach them. Men die by the hundreds of every second, eaten by the flames. It does not help that any Dol Amroth Marine aims to go with a bang, resulting to suicide charges that target the fat line of provisions that have been stored in each ship. Other ships that are lucky enough for a fire ship not to explode do not survive the Marines, carrying flammable materials with them that result to the same ship turning to cinder. As for Jon, he leads his fire ship, the Lucky Wolf, to a prime juicy target he has spotted in the distance. Once it has been named the Queen Cersei by its builders and the pride and joy of the royal fleet. When Stannis fell back with the majority of the fleet, with his abandonment of King's Landing after the discovery of the royal bastards, he has renamed it Robert's Hammer in honor of his older brother, who is the rightful king. It is a large ship, a galleon repurposed to a warship with massive ballistae and holes where archers can fire. It is almost a rain of arrows that meets Jon's fireship charge. Men of Dol Amroth fell like flies around him, and Jon has to jump in and hold the ropes of the sail straight as the last of his men fell. A pain in his shoulder made him grimace as an arrow strikes him there. Grimacing, he grabs the arrow and broke it at its shaft before returning his attention to the ropes, holding the sail aloft. With a mighty roar that would have made the ancient Starks proud, he crashes his ship to the Robert's hammer, making it implode from the inside, as the front of Jon's fireship busted a hole on its side, the repertoire of pig bladders multiplying the explosion force.
The impact is so great that Jon finds himself flying off his ship, and the cold touch of the sea receiving him in its embrace. To key retry the invasion fleet. They are literally sailing over walls of fire in the left and the right around her. She can see Dol Amroth Marines pouring water over the sides of the galleon to prevent the wood from burning up out of being so near the aflame ships of the Baratheon fleet. Reimagined is no stranger to danger and fighting. This is the first time, however, she has seen a devastation such as this. The sight of men jumping out of the sides of their burning ships, the pained and panicked cries echoing like a symphony of the damned, and worse, the smell of flesh burning. "Onwards! We push on! Each group to your stations!" barks Tormund Giantsbane, leveling his short sword at the direction of the palisade walls supporting the original walls of Dragonstone. The plan of the Dol Amroth army is simple. The approach of Dol Amroth is divided into two sides. On one hand, the forces of Reborn and that of her other commanders would dock on the main platform of the enemy harbor, where their heavier troops can walk unimpeded. The other hand, however, is that of Tormund's, who would use the shallows and attack the palisade walls of Dragonstone. The walls of Dragonstone have always remained strong due to continuous upkeep by the Targaryen kings. However, the reign of Robert, filled with decadence and bankruptcy, does not bode the fortress well. Stannis, who only relies on his coin and pay along that of the meager lands and holdings of Dragonstone, has barely managed to retain the usual upkeep of the fortress island, battered by the elements. Wooden planks are kicked off the sides of the galleons, and out jumps Dol Amroth, marines from light-armored auxiliaries to heavy-set shield wielders and archers. Unlike the rest of Westeros, the Marines of Dol Amroth is specifically trained to run and fight while being knee-deep in water. Of course, despite the hundreds pouring out of the galleons, the foe that awaits them is no slouch, even though the majority of his army already burnt down to the bottom of the sea. Stannis has reinforced the unrepaired walls of Dragonstone with wooden palisades, now filled with archers. Behind the wall, catapults are being readied and reloaded in preparation. That's not to mention, of course, the wall of stakes sitting at the beachhead bound together by thick ropes that would impede even the most confident of attackers. If the men of Dol Amroth are looking for an easy victory here, they are dead wrong. Dragonstone might not be impregnable, but it represents Stannis to the letter. Proud, stern, tactican, and strong. Fire! Hundreds, if not thousands, of arrows meet the charge of Silver and Blue Head-On. In an instant, men are dying on the beach at the lack of cover. Dozens upon dozens fell, struck down by arrows. The Marines of Dol Amroth, however, expected this. Unlike Westeros, the populace that make up the seashore city is not Andals or even Westerosi. Majority of them come from UT as peasants, and with them they brought along the culture and knowledge of their people. In this case, large rectangular shields, each the size of a man. They are hardened wood and reinforced with metal plating to prevent arrows from coming through. They are so large, however, that it takes one man without other weapons to carry one. As such, they serve as good buffer for the arrows. While many of the central approaching Marines are taken down by arrows, the front lines are much safer as the shield bearers form a wall of steel to prevent the vanguard from being decimated. It is then that the catapults of Storm's End start their play. Massive balls of fire crash into the shoreline, sending Marines flying at each direction. This time, not even the shield bearers of Dol Amroth are safe, as the heavy ammunition can push through the thick-set defense with ease. That does little to halt the charge, however. Despite taking heavy losses, the Marines reach the stakes at the shore, the shield bearers immediately forming a cordon with their shields, enabling skirmishers to start hacking at the tightly bound ropes that keep the stakes together. It is dangerous work for archers immediately focus fire on anyone they can see cutting through the ropes. Without the stakes, after all, the Marines would have a clear shot at the palisade defense of Dragonstone and its archers. The skirmishers give the best they got, even with the staunch effort of the defenders. All along the stakes line, Marines can be seen hacking furiously, even with arrows sticking out of them. A young Marine can be seen cutting through a coil of rope with 2 arrows sticking from his chest. Another 5 arrows are added, only making him hack even more furiously, only dying when the rope he is cutting through are finally severed. If Stannis retains the majority of his army, he would have no problem pushing the assault back. However, with less than 3,000 men left, with the rest ending up as cinders and ash alongside with his royal fleet, they are simply doing nothing but delaying the end. With a mighty heave, a cadre of Marines finally push away a section of the stakes from the center, paving a clear way for the Marines to rush over. Arrows and catapult fire land among them in an effort to stall the advance. Men of Dol Amroth die in droves, but the advance does not stall as the defenders hoped it would. The wall of shields continue to push through despite the gaps caused by the catapult fire. More men only come to fill in the gaps, and the defenders realize their sudden predicament going harder as the arrows and crossbow bolts of the Marines counterfire. Baratheon archers fell and die in dozens, not noticing the first barrage of bolts. Crossbows are the staple weapon for most Rivendell legions. The bow might be cheaper and have longer range, but they take skill and time to learn. Crossbows, on the other hand, have lower range, but they are easy to use with a person being able to learn it in less than 3 hours. Also, crossbow punch hard above their weight. It is something that the archers of Stannis learn, as their flimsy wood covers provide little to no protection against crossbow bolts. While the archers are reeling from the barrage of arrows, the shield wall takes the opportunity to move the final leg close to the palisade supports, where the petards can finally approach. Petards are volunteers of Dol Amroth Marines, who would be throwing the bags of pig fat and oil at the palisades and set it ablaze. It is almost a one-way trip for many, as they break the cover of the shield wall to run at their targets. While 2 are successful, many do not even get the chance to make it, much less run back. One rather lucky petard who managed to run and set ablaze the main support of the palisade due to his timing of another barrage of the crossbow bolts to duck and find cover, failed rather at his attempt on getting back as an arrow strikes him at his shoulder, causing him to fall on the mud. Immediately, Tormund is out of the shield wall, roaring his displeasure as he swats arrows left and right with his short sword before running towards his downed soldier. Grabbing his scruff, he immediately hauls the man back to the lines a few meters away as crossbowmen and skirmishers cover them. At first, it looks like they would make it. However, it once more proves ill as 4 arrows strike Tormund at the back, making him fell to his knees. Immediately, the shield line breaks cover, causing nearly 20 men to die from arrows as they rush to help Tormund and bring him to the cover of the shields. To his credit, the commander of the Dol Amroth Marines does not simply cower and die due to his fatal wound. Instead, he angrily grabs the last of the pig bladders from the other petards before breaking cover to rush at the palisade support wall. Tormund Giantsbane's roar can be heard from one end of the line to the other, as at least 10 arrows strike him before he slams with all his ammunition at the already damaged wall. The result is instantaneous. A powerful explosion rocks the entirety of Dragonstone as the palisade support wall crashes down like twigs, dropping hundreds of archers and support staff of Stannis' men on the wrong side of the wall. Immediately, the Marines are on them, hacking and slashing the unprepared soldiers. Nearly no archer is left on the walls, giving opportunity for the ladders to be raised in this part of the fortress. While the assault on the walls is gaining momentum, the ones at the gate are almost finished. Like everything else in Dragonstone, it is badly maintained. Ever since the fall of the Targaryens, no one truly expected that anyone would dare attack Dragonstone, despite its key position. Other than the fortress that is costly to maintain, there is simply no strategic value of taking the island, which has barely anything of value. Stannis, however, has done his best, despite his meager support and coin during Robert's reign. A wooden gate of crisscrossing beams has been put at the entrance other than the main rotten gate. The main army of Dol Amroth, however, has not been dissuaded on bringing it down. Archers support the makeshift ram they have brought along as it is pushed upward. Petards rush the arrows once more, placing their bloated ammunitions at the wooden beams before setting them alight. Normally they would be hard-pressed to set their explosive cargoes on the gate, but the diversion of the Marines at the beach is bringing the majority of Stannis' defenses at that area. Blood for the Baratheons! Fire! Eadright's command rings true as the archers let loose with fire arrows at the fatty bags currently not burning at the first gate. The result is an instantaneous explosion that rises to the defenders above, burning them alive. Ram, push through for Dol Amroth! For victory! Her cheer is responded by the troops, as more men help push the ram on the last gate, which is rotting and decrepit, the original gate of Dragonstone. Having fun, I see, the ragged voice of Jon makes Eadright frown as her partner and husband wobbles up at her side, still wet and soggy from where a couple of soldiers fished him. I specifically told you to stay back, husband, she chides, as the stubborn Northerner draws his own sword. And let you have all the glory, dear wife. Not likely. Besides, it's only Stannis we have to deal with after this, he replies as the ram heaves and crashes to the wooden gate like a hammer on paper. The badly maintained wood crumbles under the impact and the soldiers of Dol Amroth rush in. Well, shall we? Eadright simply rolls her eyes as her infuriating husband joins the charge, in which she also follows. To say the least, the charge to the main hall of Dragonstone is anticlimactic. The remaining forces of Stannis do their best to slow the advance as best as they can. To their credit, they fought like warriors, not giving one step back, fighting on narrow corridors, where the large numbers of the invaders are rendered moot. They are simply trampled through. However, the quality and quantity of Dol Amroth's soldiers far ahead than the regular man-at-arms. In less than 20 minutes, they finally reach the main hall where Stannis awaits with 50 of his men and that red priestess of his. The bastard of Winterfell arrives, here to take my head off for me, bastard, sneers the balding man, that is Stannis Baratheon, who doesn't even look unfazed, even as the hall slowly fills with more Dol Amroth Marines. Former bastard, corrects her husband. Falling now to insults with the rest of your men being food for worms, and the fish pretender. Funny you called me that, since I am the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms. Not any of Cersei's and Jaime's bastards, growls the man. Very convenient excuse and made-up story for a brother that the king holds no love with. It must be agonizing for you to dream what you cannot have, ever. One can hear the grinding of teeth of the man who seems near apoplectic with rage. I have always done my duty to my brother and the realm. I served loyally even when my brother drags his fat arse around the kingdom. There is no point in discussing this more. Yes, there is no point. Jon Stark agrees, leveling his weapon as Stannis draws his own sword. He is the Lord of the Light's chosen Azor Ahai, the prophesied savior of Westeros, declares the Red Priestess at his side. Right, and I'm Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, replies Eadright with a roll of her eyes, earning her the chuckles of her men. The fight is rather short. Jon goes straight against Stannis, and the rest made sure that the duel have no disturbance. For a moment, it is terrifying as the Red Priestess turns the closest 10 men to cinders. She is given no chance for a second attack, though, as Eadright's arrow strikes her right in the forehead while she's busy doing her voodoo magic. The 50 men of Stannis doesn't last long, and so does their lord. Stannis might have a reputation of a commander, but he is certainly no great fighter. He is, after all, a lord who commands from the back and not at the front. Jon Stark, on the other hand, is a former bastard whose mindset has been set that the only way he can gain recognition from his house and to get away from his status is through martial prowess. Unlike the Baratheon lord, he is also a natural at swordplay and young. 3 minutes, and the brother of Robert's body fell headless on the floor as his head flops like a ball thudding on the stairs, before coming to a stop near the painted table.